everyone, and welcome to another Prevail Compliance Corner. I am Orly Burlov.
And I'm Noel Vestal.
Yeah, we're Batman and Robin, or I don't
Whatever.
know, whatever. Yeah, whoever Wonder Woman's sidekick is. And we have two very special guests joining us today. We have Anil Varma and Sam Reddy from Intersect. Why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves? Anil, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Thank you, Orly, and thank you, Noel, for inviting us to this Compliance Corner talk. I'm Anil Varma. I'm the president at Intersect Inc. We are an RPO providing CMMC services for companies to get ready for CMMC compliance.
And Sam, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Thank you, Orly. I'm Sam Reddy, Vice President of Intersect, and we are a CMMC service provider, policy procedure remediation, as well as the technical controls remediation provider.
Well, thank you. All right, so we have an interesting topic today. We invited our friends over at Intersect to come here and talk to us on a very grand title. It is called Compliance from the Front Lines. Starring Sylvester Stallone, starring Anil and Sam, but compliance from the front lines, getting to audit ready with your RPO. And, you know, it is an austere and very awe-inspiring title, but it's an important topic. And we thought that these guys from Intersect who are in RPO would be the great ideal people to talk to us, because they are, you know, in Virginia, where there are a ton of defense companies dealing with the type of companies we talk to all the time, which are, you know, small to medium defense companies. Why don't we just kick this off and ask you, Anil, you know, the type of companies you guys talk to. When we were preparing, you were saying there are a lot of these kind of small 5 to 10, 15 to 20 person companies. Yeah, why don't you just kind of expand on that, say, you know, a little bit about them?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So before I get into what those company profiles look like, you know, let's step back a little bit. When, you know, the CMMC was just about, you know, getting stood up, you know, in terms of CMMC 1.0, and you know, the Department of Defense laid out the impact of CMMC compliance. At that time, if you look at the numbers that were published, 300,000 companies in the defense industrial base. And there were statistics around almost 80% of these companies fall into small, medium-sized businesses.
Yep.
From mom
That's
and
160,000 for you boys at home and girls at home who are doing the math. 80% of 200,000, 160. So yes, 160,000 companies.
Yeah, and you know, these companies range from one employee company. We have talked to one employee company that wanted CMMC, all the way to companies that have, you know, employees in hundreds, if not thousands. But they are still, you know, it's funny how you define small businesses or medium-sized businesses. The you know, there could be a large manufacturer, right? But they have like so little IT staff. Their defense industry, DoD work might be a small, and a lot of the GSA, how they define small businesses are based on the NAICS code, which basically defines, you know, the thresholds for what they define as a small business.
Right.
And so let's talk about, you know, what these companies look like and what their typical challenges are, right? So small businesses, one employee company that we talked to, he worked had a company and was working with Air Force. And he was the CEO, he was the IT person with only one.
Jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. And you throw CMMC compliance, this was, you know, prior to CMMC 2.0. So you have basically, you know, defining whether or not you have COI, then doing the remediation, and then you get through the audit, which is a separate cost. How are these small businesses going to afford this kind of a CMMC compliance?
Right.
When the 2.0 came up, right, you know, when the 1.0 came up for CMMC, there were the Department of Defense solicited comments from everybody who was impacted by CMMC, with the small, large businesses. Almost around 1,000 comments came through, 900 plus comments, and I would say 90% of those comments were related to the cost and the impact to the small businesses to comply with CMMC, right? And so they did listen to the small businesses, and then and when the CMMC 2.0 came up, they removed the audit component. So there is some relief from that cost of audit. There is a self-assessment at level 1, but level 2 has audit requirement.
Right.
Now the small businesses, the typical profile of the small businesses are that they have practically 0 to like a partial IT or even managed service providers providing IT services. They probably have some very basic idea about security in terms of user ID, password authentication, but nothing more beyond that, right? So part of helping them understand what the CMMC is, educating them and making sure that they know how is this going to be a business enabler for them, for the growth, and it is not just a security problem. It's just how you improve your security so you can continue to do business with DoD and even in other federal agencies.
I know I have a quick question. I know that this is something that we kind of see more often than not. I have a lot of calls with potential customers and clients, and a lot of the time I hear, when I ask, well, how mature is your overall program? The answer is always, oh, we're very mature. We're very mature. I feel like statistically speaking, that's probably less likely. Do you see a lot of people that you talk to, having these consulting calls, as like that initial call? Do you see a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, we're super mature, and then you start to dig into it and it's very obvious that maybe they're not as mature as they thought they were?
Yeah, so we see potential when we talk to these companies. There are two extreme cases. A company would say, yeah, we think we are CMMC compliant, but we don't know whether we have CUI.
Yes,
I've
heard that one
CMMC
too.
Compliant. Okay.
Yeah,
so,
heard that one too.
I'm sure we could learn a lot by kind of jumping to that next point, because I think when we were preparing for the show, that we had some really interesting conversations about this whole topic. Okay, you have a lot of small companies who you're talking to, Sam and Noel, and they're not sure if they have to meet CMMC. B, they are not even sure if they have CUI. Right. So let's just talk about that for a moment. Figuring out if you have CUI and you have a 7012 clause. What is the thing that people need to do there? Yeah,
I mean, we would suggest like one simple step they can do. Obviously, CUI scoping is a bigger topic, but one easy step they can do is log into SAM.gov. Any company that does business.
We should put that up on the screen. That's SAM, like your Uncle Sam.gov. Right.
So any company that does business with the federal government, whether it's DoD or federal civilian or any other agencies, they have to be registered in SAM.gov, and their status has to be active. And part of when you log into SAM.gov, you look into your entity, which is your company registered in SAM.gov, and you will see a section where there are reps and certs. You can download that reps and certs.
Reps and certs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Representations and certifications.
Right.
Reps and certs. You download that as a PDF, and all you have to do is Control F 7012.
Easy. So what is that? Okay, so let's not assume everyone out there knows what we're talking about. So what Anil is talking about is you go to SAM.gov, you type in your company name, and you go to reps and certs, and it's going to download a document, which is essentially your contract with the DoD. And what you're looking for is what is called a DFARS 7012 clause. All right. I'm going to stop there in the face of greater fingers than I am. Noel, just give us a quick 2-line bumper sticker statement of what that 7012 means.
7012. Absolutely. I could do this all day. My elevator pitch on 7012, there's 3 big points you want to consider on 7012. The first one, obviously, is 7012. The title says it all. It's about securing CUI. So if you have a 7012 clause, even if you're not sure if you have CUI, that means you do still have to follow these specific guidelines. 1, you have to be 800-171, NIST 800-171 compliant, which is in line with CMMC version 2. Number 2, you have to, any sort of cloud service provider that you are using has to be FedRAMP moderate equivalent or FedRAMP moderate ATO, either way. And number 3, you have to, anything that you use, any cloud service provider that you use, and you yourself, you have to adhere to what's known as paragraphs C through G of 7012, which essentially says that there's image capturing that your CSP has to be able to do and say that they will do. And there's also incident reporting that you yourself have to do. And there's information in there on that.
Right.
So, hope that was quick.
So if you were wondering what 7012 requires you to do with CUI, it means you got to protect it. Imagine this is like your pregnancy test. Do I have CUI? Go into SAM.gov. This is, your 2 little pink lines. I don't know. There are lots of guys out there. I shouldn't be pejorative, but ask, if you're asking yourself, do I have CUI? That's what you need to do to figure out if you're pregnant or not. And if you are pregnant, you need to get started on protecting your CUI. See, Noel's laughing. She knows where I'm coming from.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
That's a good analogy, Orly. So it's like both exciting and now you have work to do.
Yep. And now
That's
you
right.
have so much stuff to do.
I love that.
And it takes like 9 to 10 months to do it. So that's like, yeah, it's perfect.
Right.
You get morning
There you go.
sickness. Do you get morning sickness when you start?
Yeah, lots of nausea. Yeah, definitely. So much nausea. Yes, definitely.
All right. So Sam, you've been very quiet there, just kind of like the smiling Mona Lisa. So the question is, all right, I have CUI. Now what? You found out that you have a 7012 clause in your contract, and you have to protect CUI. What do you tell your customers now? We can't hear you, Sam.
As a customer now, you are obligated to just like protect that CUI. You may not have the CUI, but you said in the representations and certifications that you would protect that as an entity. Now it's your responsibility to protect that, and you got to be compliant. In order to be compliant, and you got, I'm sorry,
Tell them you're on another call and that they'll have to call you back.
That's what I did, and I disconnected. So now you got to be compliant. In order for you to be compliant, you got to just like, okay, work with one of the service provider or consultant. It doesn't matter, either Intersec or any of the market service provider. You got to reach out to them like, okay, if you don't understand, what do you need to do? What is the step 1 of the process? So we do have, as an Intersec, as a service provider, we have 30 minutes free consultation. You are more than welcome to reach out to us, and we would just walk you through the steps. What would be your next steps, and what that means is for your organization. What are your policies and procedures for your organization? How do you remediate those controls to fulfill your policies, procedures that you wrote, or in fact, you asked your service provider to write, and be compliant with the CMMC regulation, which is 800-171, followed by the CMMC additional controls, the 2.0 controls. And I believe there are another 10 controls, about 121 controls. You got to be compliant. Hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that definitely does. So, someone is realizing that, okay, they now need to be compliant with those controls. And the first step is, creating a system security plan, talking about kind of looking through their whole architecture and realizing what they are doing at each step to comply with the control, what steps they're taking for logging, what steps they're taking for training, what steps they're taking for multi-factor authentication, kind of like all those 110 controls need to be documented. And if you only have a 1-person shop or a 2-person shop or a half-person shop, as you were describing, that becomes challenging. They probably are turning to people like you guys over at Intersec or their local RPO or RP to help them out. I mean, there are though things that they kind of can do on their own once they get that realization that they have CUI. After they kind of do those preliminaries that I just described, where do you tell them to go?
Yeah, let me help you here. So everyone thinks that they can do the job. It is not about doing the job and doing that control mitigation, for example, and you have the password policy. Okay, I have the complex password policy I have implemented and I have those control in place, right? That is not about it. You have done it. You should be able to articulate that when your auditor comes, and I mean, just show them the evidence that you have that password policy. It is more than just you have a policy, you have a control in place. You got to be able to produce the the fact, artifact or evidence for
Right.
the auditor to certify you. A lot of people try to ignore or discount that part until auditor can see with their eyes and then certify you, you are not compliant. You are only audit ready, but you are not
Noel is
compliant.
chomping at the bit. This sounds like so many
I
conversations we've
cannot,
had.
yeah, I can't even tell you how many times I've had that exact conversation, those exact words with people. That's something we've talked about multiple times here on Compliance Corner. I've talked to lots of current customers, prospective customers with Prevail as well. Again, it goes back to that whole, I can't tell you how many different prospective customers I've talked to who say, oh yeah, no, I've got a mature CMMC program. Like, I'm ready to go. I could get audited right now. And my response is, I once felt that way too. As someone who has gone through this myself personally, I was like, oh yeah, we're totally good. We've got everything great. And then called in, an RPO to do that last sort of gap analysis and found out that there were, like probably 5 to 10 different findings that we needed to address. I would never have known about those had I not had an RPO come in. And I think you're making the exact point that, we all as humans have personal bias. We just do. There's nothing to really do about that. We can mitigate it as much as possible, but you're never going to be as honest about your program as a third party is going to be. And, to have somebody come in like you guys who understands this process, really understands what is needed to get to that audit ready. It's like ready to go truly for a CMMC audit. That's what you need. You have to have that additional little help in order to, and really, if for nothing else, peace of mind. If somebody comes to you guys, Noel and Sam, and says, hey, I'm really ready, and they find out that they missed some things, you guys point them out, and now they can go, oh, good. When I get my assessment, that's very expensive to do twice, I might add, I'm going to feel a lot better about it. So I'm so glad you said that.
So Noel, you're right on the mark. I'll take a simple example, right? Let's say you did it and your policy and procedure is accurate and you implemented the control, but you forgot to enable the log. So now you miss the point. So that you can't prove that you are like compliant, because auditor comes and asks me, show me the log last 3 months that you are compliant and you are on that particular control. You have nothing to produce. So he cannot take the words. So you are not technically compliant at that point because he cannot certify you.
Absolutely.
So it's critical to understand the okay, not only meeting the control and be able to produce the evidence for an auditor to certify you. And that's why you need to take it to the subject matter experts who are compliance service providers who know what they are doing, rather outside a consultant, one-off consultants who cannot do the work from cradle to grave to be able to certify you as a CMMC compliant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It goes back to the idea that, and again, we've said this a bunch, you're telling a story to the auditor. That's what you're doing. That is your whole job. So each control, you're telling a story. I have my policy. This is what I'm saying I'm going to do. I have my procedures. This is how I'm doing those things. This is how I'm implementing that policy. And then here is where I prove to you that I'm doing it. Like you're talking about the logs, or you're looking at a screenshot or a demo or whatever it is, because that last part is essential. If you don't have all 3 of those components, And it's very easy to, like you said, it's very easy to forget one, you know, or overlook one, or get distracted with the other two and just not come back to it, or a myriad of different things. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's a great example. And I'm sorry, Orly, I was cutting you off.
No worries. I was just going to say, so that brings an interesting point, which is if you are looking for an RPO, you know, there's kind of, how do I know I'm not getting a snake oil salesman? And how do I know I'm getting the real deal? I know we talked about this a bit in preparation, but you know, why don't you let people know what are some of the warning signs? Warning signs of you are talking to a snake oil salesman. Number one, he's wearing a shark skin suit. Number two, he has slicked back hair. And number three, he smiles way too much. What are 4 and 5?
Yeah. Or asking you how much dollars do you have for CMMC compliance?
There you go. That's a good one. That's a good one.
Have you budgeted?
Right.
Yes.
So,
And well, one thing I just realized I said she could wear a shark skin suit too and have oil grease back hair. It's
Right.
not gender specific, be boy or girl. We got that straight. Okay, sorry,
Right.
I interrupted.
so if you look at, you know, not just CMMC, but any kind of like even the precursor, right? The 171. Many of the consultants that we have seen, they fall into two broad categories. One on the audit. So they are like some of these consultants are auditors. They know how to audit, but they are not solution architect. And then there are this other group of people who understand the requirements. They know what, you know, they can do policy procedure, but they cannot solution based on your environment. So you really need security solutions architect.
Is that, how would you find that? Would that be part of their title?
No, so yeah, so when you're vetting the RPOs, those are the questions you should be asking. You know, what kind of you know, subject matter experts do you have in on your staff, or even, you know, people that you're going to bring on to really understand and bring a solution that is right fit for your organization. You know, there are many claimed RPOs or RPs. They just went through that 8-hour, like the RPs went through the 8-hour of course, call themselves RP, but they are not really solutions architect. Then they kind of get the gist of what the control requirements are, but they really can't solution it to the need of the organization or make it operationally efficient, right? So one of the things that you should be asking an RPO is, you know, what are the, you know, how are you going to approach this, right? How do you solution CMMC technical controls for us to be compliant? You know, there are people who can write policy procedures all day long without even, you know, just download it and replace the company name with the customer name and say, you know, go and do it without thinking too much about whether
Right.
this is.
So let me just put a fine point and tell me where I
customer.
get wrong. So it's kind of like, how are you going to assess our company against the 110 controls? How are you going to look at our company and make sure you're not just doing this the way you did it to the company that you talked to last week?
Right.
And I think the other point to sort of piggyback into everything, and Noel, correct me if I'm wrong, but, and I really love that you said this, is it is one thing to be able to do auditing, and auditing is its own specific set of you know, qualifications, and that's an important thing to have. But I love that you pointed out, but you also want to have people that really do understand cybersecurity and what cybersecurity posturing really looks like, and people who don't just have an RP. I mean, I definitely would not want to be in a situation where I went to an RPO and the only thing I have is an RP.
Right.
You know, like an RP, and there would be an assessor, and that's great, but do those people have any sort of IT background? Do they have any cybersecurity background? Like you said, are they used to doing those kinds of solutions? Because it is really wonderful, and I'm not discounting at all, having, you know, the RPs and RPOs and this, you know, and all those different certifications that we have. But I agree with you completely. And I'm so glad you made that like your first point, which is, you know, you need to have people who can also say, yeah, this is all, I understand all the policy procedure. However, this is how you implement it. And to Orly's point, this is how you implement it specifically for your organization, not for somebody else's organization. This is not I know that I'm sure you've heard of it too, where there is kind of that, cut and paste sort of RPO system. Like, okay, great. Well, this is either a medium, low, or high, and we're just going to do the same thing we did last time. Well, it needs to be much more specific and tailored to your specific business processes, and also what's actually able to be maintained. A lot of these RPOs, I think, come in, and that's another thing to look out for. If you have a company that says, oh yeah, you're going to be able to maintain this, and if you have a feeling that there's no way you're going to be able to do that, trust that feeling.
Right.
You're probably right.
That's
So
true.
let me add something to Noel. So what we are talking about here is like, okay, you have every organization is different. Their business requirements are different. Why I say that, you may have a couple of consultants, you may have a couple of buy your own devices. So now they're not your corporate devices. You cannot just like, okay, apply the same rules the way you apply to your corporate device.
Yeah,
Now you have to think about it's a solution. It has to be well thought about solution. So you should be in a position to audit all the devices, including their mobile devices, that make sure that CUI is not sitting in their devices. You need to have the conditions and rules and policies that you need to be deploying to meet the policy you wrote earlier. That is important. It is very important.
I think one thing you also mentioned earlier when we were prepping for the show was, the idea that they are trying to limit the scope of where you have CUI. Are they looking to really try and limit where you have CUI rather than taking this assumption, oh, you have CUI everywhere? Well, if you do, it's like a nuclear spillage. You need to kind of clean that stuff up and contain it. You need to have it in a unique space. One of the things I thought you said that was interesting, some of the gotchas to avoid snake oil salesmen is anyone who's trying to push a particular solution, just a one size fits all. Oh, you need a GCC high. Oh, you have to have a Prevail. Oh, you have to have a virtual. Any of those solutions. If they're kind of not thinking of it in terms of what you need and what works for your organization, that's a big red flag.
That's so very true. Yeah. I mean, there are companies that, in the course of CMMC compliance journey, they have gone through digital transformation because they did not anticipate, the kind of operational overhead that they are maintaining, and it's going to grow even more significantly higher if they don't, streamline and bring it all into one, like a good operational. So let's say there was one company that we were talking to, they have Yahoo for business, they have Google Drive, they have Office 365, they have PCs, they have Macs, they have bring your own device. How do you make sure that, so if you look at it at the surface level, you will have pointed solution. For Yahoo business, you do this. For Gmail, you do this. For Office 365, do something else. But now think about this company, they won't be operationally ready. There will be so much cost just to manage all this IT plus the security aspect of it, right? So it's very important that you look at it from, a solutioning standpoint, whether it's IT or security, to make it not just CMMC compliant, but be able to maintain and sustain operationally and financially.
Right? Absolutely. Right. Yeah. And financially, I like that. I like that you put that in there because operationalize what I always think of, but you're right. And financially too, is it something that can be sustained long-term financially? And if somebody's trying to talk you into something, again, you're not comfortable with financially and otherwise, that's a big red flag too. Sorry, Sam. Yes.
No, let me add my question here, right? And I mean, yes, say the CMMC compliance is a check mark, right? Okay, you want to be CMMC compliant, continue to do business with the defense organization as well as the federal agencies, right? Don't you want to be secured? Let me ask that question.
Right.
You are compliant. You are trying to be compliant. You are working with a service provider to just like, okay, secure a solution to be compliant. But as well, this is an opportunity for you to be secured as an organization, and your users and your devices and the business processes, your intellectual property, anything that is just flowing through your devices to your users, your suppliers. This is the opportunity, and you can't be settling for less, and you need to be able to find a registered practice offering provider who can just do like not only compliance but secure your organization. So
And that's a
that's
really
what we
important
do.
point.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something we hold near and dear to our heart as well, which is, yes, it's a check that you need to do, but it shouldn't be a check the box, because the ultimate goal of this is to prepare your organization to be cyber ready and to protect it.
Yeah, definitely. And something very, very quick anecdote to that, just to sort of drive this home for our listeners. It is, you're absolutely right. It's not just about CMMC. It's not just about NIST. It's not just about checking those boxes. I know of an organization. I have a friend who works at an organization who the organization had a ransomware attack because their security was not the way it should have been. And so for a solid 2 weeks, no one could get anything done. Everything was locked out. They had to pay $5 million for the encryption key. And the thing that people don't understand is it's like, oh, okay, great. I paid the money. Right now it's all over. No, it took us, I think he told me it took a solid like 4 to 5 months. That's months, not weeks, to get all of that information back. Because when they give that information back to you, they don't have any care about what order it was in before or where it was supposed to go or who was supposed to have access to it. It all just gets sent back to you as this blank sort of sheet. And it's like, okay, good luck, figure everything out. Literally took 4 to 5 months. Now imagine what is the cost in so many different ways of that to the people who work for you, who now are, probably freaked out by the fact that this happened. And, what happens to you overall as a company in the media, if somebody gets a hold of that information, our customers going to want to work with you. Our agency is going to want to work with you. Let's say that it's even, maybe you're sort of dragging your feet on CMMC and thinking like NIST 800-171, yeah, I should do it. But like, we're dragging our feet. If you have a ransomware attack, and that's something that gets out into the media, do you really think there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be super excited to go and work with you? Probably not as many as you think. So, and again, agencies can, any, representative of the government has Google and can find that information out too. So it's something to really consider. Absolutely. Just to your point, that it's not just about checking the box. It's also about saving that money, that time, that manpower, that bad press, everything. It really does check so many other boxes that people, I think, sort of disregard inadvertently.
Yep.
Good point,
Yep.
Noel. And it strikes more prominently when things happen within your network company. Sam and I know you went out of business. They were barred from doing business with the government.
Yeah.
It was that bad. It was again a ransomware attack. Secret Service had to come in and do all the forensics, and they're out of business.
And it's awful, and it happens more times than we even know. And it's definitely, again, it's important to, we obviously want to check the box and make sure we're compliant for the reasons of being able to do business and everything else. But I think to Sam's point and your point, it's so much bigger than that. It really is. It's so, and like Orly said, security is near and dear to our heart. Obviously here, we're a zero trust company. So, definitely I would love it if there were more people out there like you guys, telling everybody that, hey, no, this is really important for so many reasons, not just this checking the box. So glad that you guys said that. It's important.
Noel,
All
in
right.
that example,
I'm sorry, Sam. We're just
no, I
about
just
out
wanted,
of time.
okay,
Oh,
got
you
it.
want to make a final comment? Go ahead,
My final comment is the example that Anil was talking about. The company outgrown, and but they ran into the numerous audits, and yes, that just put a full stop for their growth. So every organization must grow, right? In order for you to grow, you got to be compliant, you got to be secured, and that's the only way.
Very true. Very true.
All right. Well, thank you guys. It has been a pleasure to have you on the show. We look forward to having you on again. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Orly. Thank you, Noel.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.